Hello and welcome to The Curator on Monocle Radio with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Over the next 60 minutes, I'll be bringing some of the very best interviews and reports from the past week of our coverage. This week, we speak with the architect behind this year's Serpentine Pavilion.
I try to use light in every possible way. In the mosque, you see light brings that sense of spirituality in that space.
Plus, a Brazilian musical journey from the 70s and 80s.
I should say to our listeners that you have controversially, because this is Brazil, Fernando, you've gone for the top 6, haven't you?
All that and much more in the next hour, here on The Curator, with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We start the show with a highlight from our news show, The Globalist. After nearly a decade of unofficial restrictions, China is finally letting K-pop back in. The ban, which began in 2016 after diplomatic fallout over missile defense, quietly sidelined one of South Korea's biggest cultural exports. But with shifting geopolitics, economic incentives, and a new South Korean president in office, Beijing seems ready to hit play again. Let's hear it from Bernie Cho, president of the Seoul-based K-pop agency DFSB Collective.
As you duly noted, it was very much a geopolitical situation, and usually when there's political strife, in order to really sort of bring the pain points to the fore, you usually go after big exports. And in the case of Korea, the second largest consumer export goods out of South Korea is actually K-pop culture. Automobiles, for good reason, for obvious reasons, is number one, but it surprises a lot of people that K-pop culture, that includes TV, film, music, and video games, etc., is a $11 billion plus export. And it's very important to the Korean economy, not just for, revenues, but also for soft power. Perception is reality. And if China wanted to make a point, going after pop culture is not just for optics, but really for economic reasons. And this was a very painful stage for the K-pop culture industries. Now, that being said, a lot of the K-pop culture companies shifted their focus away from China towards North America and other parts of the world and did find success. But China still is very much a very important market to the Korean music, TV, film markets, industries. And so the fact that the second largest consumer export was struggling to get any traction in the second largest music market for Korean music was very painful for the past decade. But fortunately, over the past few weeks and the past few months, we've definitely started to see signs of both China and Korea preparing for a K-pop market opening. We've seen, for instance, Tencent Music Entertainment start engaging in very major investments in Korean music companies such as SM Entertainment. Their competitors, NetEase Cloud Music, was also starting to announce more direct deals with Korean music companies. And then also just chatter of Korean music acts starting to book concerts in the mainland. Up until now, any Korean music act that was thinking of performing in China pretty much had to reroute themselves to be Hong Kong or Macau. But the fact that the mainland may now become mainstream to Korean pop music is something that the industry has been patiently waiting for. And just a few hours ago, with President Lee Jae-myung, he just came right out of the gates in his inauguration speech where, and I quote, "K-culture's economy and national competitiveness, I will further grow Korea's cultural industry." I mean, this came out in his inauguration speech. And so the industry is moving away from cautious optimism to just optimism.
I mean, there was never an official ban on Hallyu, though. So what's changed? What's actually changed now?
Well, again, as you mentioned, it was sort of an unofficial kind of official ban. For instance, Korean music was still widely available on Chinese streaming music services, but where the impact of the ban really hurt and really hit was in live music. Korean music artists could not perform in the mainland, even though they might have tried and applied. They couldn't get visas to perform on the mainland, and that seems to be changing and shifting. There seems to be a warming in that space and in that that regard. The other thing is just openly promoting and openly marketing in the Chinese music market was incredibly difficult. But we're already starting to hear signs of shows that are potentially being booked for later in the year. And so people are wondering and waiting and hoping that it'll open. Now, just a few weeks ago, there was a K-pop boy band made of all native Korean citizens who were scheduled to perform a concert in the end of May, but that was canceled at the last minute. But nonetheless, there have been just a lot of chatter among concert promoters of potentially bringing Korean music acts to the mainland. But again, with the perception that the new president is a little bit friendlier to the Chinese government, there's optimism that perhaps all the different restrictions and obstacles to getting access to a very important Chinese music market will soon be lifted. So, many people have their fingers crossed. And in many ways, I think with bated breath, waiting to see this quote unquote unofficial ban be lifted.
As you say, of course, as a tool of soft power for South Korea, K-pop is enormously significant. But why does it matter so much? Why does K-pop matter so much to China? Is it about popularity, pressure, or politics?
I think it's a little bit of everything and more. For instance, when we look at the Chinese music market, K-pop is the most popular international pop music genre in China. Another thing is that when we look at many of the deals that we're starting to see between Chinese music companies and Korean music companies, it's not just a simple straight content import or export. If anything, it goes a lot deeper. It's almost kind of sort of like a technology transfer, but instead of being chips or semiconductors or automobiles, it has to do with what we would call culture technology, where the Chinese are looking to Korean music companies to provide their know-how, their expertise, and their experience in production. And in return and in exchange, seeing these Korean-trained Chinese acts be marketed and promoted not only within China, but more importantly, beyond China, there seems to be an effort and an outreach to create synergies. And what we're starting to see now is, for instance, the biggest Korean music company, HYBE, the home to BTS, they just announced a few weeks ago that they opened an office in China, in Beijing. And so many people are excited to see what these Korean music companies will do in China. And again, Chinese music acts, for whatever reason, if they've been trained in a K-pop band or in Korea, tend to become just mega superstars, not just in China, but across the region and beyond the region as well.
And we stay in Asia now for an Asia perfume special on entrepreneurs. This time, Laura Kramer speaks with Jung Lin about his artistic perfumery from Seoul, born to stand out.
I was a fanatic of fragrance. I've been a fragrance nerd all my life, ever since my teenage, like early teenage. That's when I've been collecting. I've been buying perfume at least one per week for the past 20 years. That's how much I was into it. And perfume and art, these two were my biggest obsessions. But my career, of course, was not in perfume. I was actually a investment banker specializing in cosmetics industry and retail industry. So that was my profession, and that's where my business expertise or acumen was relied upon. In late 2020, I was fired from my last job, and they gave me a big fat check as they laid me off, which gave me a foundation to start off my brand.
I love that. And being a fan of art and being a fan of perfume, you obviously know the market very well, but what did you feel was missing from that world? And you're like, oh, this is a gap I could fill.
I wasn't thinking of filling a white space. I was trying to create my own space because we are in a world. I call my brands artistic perfumery. Art should be a self-expression. It's not about filling a gap. It's about expressing who you are, not minding other people's business, just doing your own thing. And that's what I want to replicate for our brand, Born to Stand Out.
So navigating your own path, creating your path, I should say, not trying to take other people's lane necessarily. Yeah. So then tell me about the inspiration behind the look, the creative direction for it.
So it's a stark contrast. It's very intuitive of white and red. Me coming from Korea, I grew up in Europe and North America, in my teenage, but spent my 20s in Korea. And it was difficult. And I did not understand our people live a very conservative life, almost a predefined way of life. And if you deviate slightest from it, people freak out and call you a loser. You are considered a failure. So you are almost living a life on autopilot. And this is the lifestyle I wanted to break away from. So to reflect this value, how do I do it? So what is the element of the conservatism? And how do I visualize this? The value, the root of a value that symbolizes the conservatism of Korea is called Confucianism, which is a very conservative ideal, which is still the value that we live by and abide by. And that is reflected in white. And that's why all our conservative artistry is white. Like our porcelains are white, everything is white. And we even call ourselves the people of the white, because we are extremely proud to be conservative. And at the same time, why did I use red? Because in our culture, red is the color of taboo. If you write your name, or if you write the name of somebody you hate so much in red, it becomes a curse. So it is a color it's the forbidden color, and hence I use the colorway of the conservatism and the taboo. And that's how the visual representation or the visual direction was formed. And even the bottles is a reinterpretation of the traditional Korean porcelains.
It must be, I don't want to speak for you, but it must be difficult then to lean into that, given that's your culture, that's your background, that's how you grew up. How did you navigate that? Because surely there were people thinking, what are you doing?
In Korea, yes, of course, in the beginning. I think in the beginning there were a lot of uncertainties. We started in the middle of COVID. The niche perfume industry is still non-existent virtually, because I started from Korea. So it was a very dangerous venture. But I had a confidence in my direction. I loved perfume. I believed that my direction would work for somebody. We're not here to appeal to the crowd. We're not here to be a crowd pleaser. I will be very happy if there is just one person out of 100 people in the room that love our fragrance so much they become ambassador themselves. And that's the type of perfumery that we are pursuing. We are here to create fragrance with a strong opinion. My biggest fear is creating something that you have no opinion about. That's my direction. And I had a firm belief about this. And this is something that has worked successfully. Of course, in the beginning, I had fear. This is something that has worked successfully. And is, I believe, will continue to work. And now we have almost like a cult following. And these fans are who I work for.
You are listening to The Curator. I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. And our very special edition of the Global Countdown this week. It's a little musical journey to Brazil in the 70s and 80s.
And finally on today's show, you heard the jingle. It's time for the Global Countdown with Monocle's senior correspondent and musical curator, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Good afternoon, Fernando.
Good afternoon, Chris. I'm very excited for today's countdown.
I know you are very excited for today's countdown. This is one that is close to your heart. I'm gonna pull on your heartstrings here.
You will. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm celebrating the new issue of Confact, which is out today, is the summer issue. And for that edition, I spoke to Brazilian singer Julia Mestre. And her music used a lot of elements from the 70s and 80s in Brazil. So together with the piece, I did a little playlist.
You can't resist a playlist, can you?
You know, I am obsessed with playlists. So, of course, if you want to know the full playlist, you have to buy the issue. But I have a little selection here for you, Chris. I think you're going to like it.
You have a little selection, and I should say to our listeners that you have controversially, because this is Brazil, Fernando, you've gone for the top 6, haven't you? You just couldn't do the top 5. It had to be 6.
Absolutely. We have to be malleable here. Shall we start with a party song, though?
Okay. Party song is always a good place to start. Get us in the mood.
I agree. This is Rita Lee, the late Rita Lee. I mean, you can't talk about Brazilian pop music and rock without mentioning Rita Lee. She was genuinely our queen of rock. She's amazing. And this is one of her main hits from 1980. It's called Lança Perfume. I'll tell you actually the translation after, but first, let's dance a little bit. This is a song about celebrating life. In the video for it, she's rollerblading, so youthful. And Lança Perfume, if you translate, it's like throw perfume, but actually it's poppers, really. So that's what people use in Carnival in Brazil. Probably it's banned. I'm not, supporting anything here. But the song has a kind of this very joyful spirit, which is very, very Rita Lee.
So it's a carnival song as well, is that what we're saying?
Kind of.
It's general celebration, happiness, live life.
Exactly. And in Brazil, of course, we're known for bossa nova, samba, but I think Rita Lee brought some elements of rock music and pop, even a little bit of electronic as well. They can also be very Brazilian.
What do we have at number 5, Fernando? Moving on. Are we moving on from the party mood?
Yes, we're going to the beach. It's going to be a little bit more relaxed. Perfect for surfers. From 1983, the song was released and it was on the radio every time. It is Lulu Santos, Como uma Onda, which is like a wave.
Nada do que foi será de novo do jeito que já foi dia. Tudo passa, tudo sempre passará. Na vida vem.
Sweet Faith.
Very sweet. I mean, it's basically Lulu Santos at that time. He was a bit of a surfer. He was very zen and kind of, he changes kind of music style throughout his career. He's still alive. He's still doing a lot of kind of new music, but this is the hit.
So this is like Brazilian surfer dude. Californian surfer dude has very different types of songs.
Absolutely. Have a caipirinha in hand and relax after you surf on the beaches of Rio de Janeiro.
Okay, I think we're going to another classic Brazilian next, aren't we? I can see the name here.
That's a powerful one. Honestly, I almost cried actually coming here to the studio listening to that. We're changing vibes again. This song was actually very important, was released during the dictatorship. And it talks about the repressed youth in Brazil. And it had the powerful vocals of Elis Regina. Even mentioning her name, oh my God, I have goosebumps a little bit. You understand why. The song's from 1976. I'll try to translate a bit after, but this is Elis Regina, Como Nossos Pais.
O meu coração já faz tempo eu vi você na rua, cabelo ao vento, gente jovem reunida na parede da memória. Essa lembrança é um quadro que dói mais.
I chose the live version so you can feel the energy in her voice. I think the lyrics are amazing. Of course, this is going to be too brief for our listeners, but she says, my pains to realize that despite having done everything we have done, we're still the same. And she mean the dictatorship, no matter how much people were trying to fight against it, it was still the same, at least at the time in 1976.
What is it about Elis Regina, Fernando? What does she mean to Brazil?
I think she means a lot to Brazil. I think, she had a bit of a troubled life, but it's just the vocals. It really touches everyone's soul. And you have to see her live performance. I mean, you have to see it on videos because, of course, unfortunately she died. But yeah, she is a true icon.
A true icon. And that's only number 4. Where do we go from there, Fernando?
I'm not even sure if I'm counting with who is the best or not. Today's a bit of an exception. And number 3, this is, I would describe it as bubblegum chic. This is when the new wave movement came to Brazil. And I don't know, and I think our language, Brazilian Portuguese, is quite breezy as well. I think it's a great combination, new wave and Brazil.
I don't know what bubblegum chic is, but let's have a listen first.
This is it. Kid de Abelha with Fixação.
Fixação, teus olhos no retrato. Fixação, minha assombração. Fixação, fantasmas no meu quarto. Fixação, I want to be
Okay, that is the most classic 80s track we've had yet.
Yeah.
It's extremely 80s. If that's what bubblegum chic is, it's 80s.
It is 80s. It is 80s. And by the way, I love saying the word bubblegum, so I love, this is my overused word that I use. But shall we go back to the 70s now?
Okay, we're going back a decade,
And
sure.
we mentioned dictatorship here, but this song, don't worry, it's very breezy, very positive. But this band here, they were pure counterculture. I think one of their albums, which
Isn't everything from the 70s?
Very much so. But they are very special. Their album Acabou Chorare from 1972 is known as one of the best albums ever, not just in Brazil. Even established magazines here would say that. It was a bunch of musicians. They met in a home in Salvador, and they had all those sessions, and they produced classics like this. Novos Baianos with A Menina Dança.
Quando cheguei, tudo estava virado. Apenas me viro, mas eu mesma viro os olhinhos. Só entro no jogo porque estou mesmo depois.
That is very 70s.
And that's what I tell people. People should go and buy Compact and download all of those tracks, have a drink in hand, and that's exactly what I want to offer to our readers and listeners.
Well, we have one more, Fernando, and this is the big one from the person you interviewed as well.
I have to play. Basically, Julia Mestre, she just released her third solo album called Maravilhosamente Bem, which is marvelously well. And she told me that she chose this title because she smiles when she says it. And the music is like this. It is breezy. Of course, there's all the inspirations from the tracks we just played, but it's also very current as well.
We had to have one current one in there after the 70s and 80s.
So let's dance very brand new here with Julia Mestre, Maravilhosamente Bem.
Fernando, you do always say that sex is back.
Isn't it? And good Brazilian music is back as well.
Good Brazilian music is back.
I decided.
How much do we have in Confect extra songs you can listen to? The interview, tell us just.
There's about 10 more. There's a big profile as well of Julia Mestre, beautiful photography. And the whole issue kind of feels very, very summery. And from the menu, our food and drink show, let's hear from Mili Tsukagoshi Lagares on opening the door to the Japanese home kitchen in her new book, Umai.
I think umai feels a bit more informal. It's like when you're eating at home with your family so when I first moved to Japan, I was planning to move to Tokyo, but obviously had to find a flat. So I was living in Yokosuka, which is an hour south by the beach. And I lived with this group of boys. So it was very informal all the time. And obviously I was cooking for the book. So every night I'd be making everyone dinner. And umai is just, you'd say it with your friends and people you're close to. I wouldn't necessarily say it in a restaurant. If you're going to some amazing omakase sushi, you probably wouldn't say umai. But I just wanted the book, kind of one of the main themes was making it accessible and just like feeling easy to read and easy to cook. And I don't know, I thought oishi just felt a bit like everyone's heard that before. Wanted to bring something new to the table. Yeah.
Well, you certainly do bring something new to the table in your approach to the presentation and cooking of these things. I suppose what I think is really interesting about the accessibility of this book is not only, I suppose, dispelling the myth of how difficult cooking Japanese food really is, but there's a real practical component to the size of your kitchen. We're talking about cooking from a Japanese home kitchen, and it's quite specific. It's a Japanese home kitchen. It's not just any kitchen.
Yeah.
So can you please tell us about your kitchen in Tokyo and how it actually shaped these recipes?
Yeah, I live alone in Tokyo. So essentially the book's broke up into 4 different chapters, and the first chapter is very based on home cooking for 1 or maybe 2. I think everyone knows Japanese flats are absolutely tiny. I live in a studio, so it's like my bed, 5 steps, kitchen, wall, and that's it. But I was kind of almost lucky enough to have 2 gas stoves, and I've got a fish grill underneath. I've got about 15 centimetres area to chop and prepare and do everything in a sink. So just having things that weren't too complicated. And like you said, I think a lot of Japanese food can be thought of as complicated or really like hard to get right, and things are plated so beautifully. And home cooking is actually just about having like big dishes to share, or, you know, whenever I go to people's houses in Japan, or what I was brought up on is having like 5 different dishes at dinner. So you'll have a pickled element, you'll have a stewed element, a kind of main meat or fish element, some veg. It's kind of all about colour and lots of different things. So, you know, I'll make pickles at the beginning of the week, then they're in my fridge, and veg side dishes can be as simple as blanching spinach or broccoli and then putting katsuobushi, which is fish flakes, and soy sauce. Like, not every single recipe, actually quite a lot of them I would say are under 10 ingredients and pretty easy to do. Also, whether you're in Japan or whether you're in England or America or Europe, I wanted to make sure that everyone could get these ingredients and make these things. And I mean, I mentioned in the book, but I don't have a rice cooker because I don't have space. So you can just use a pot to make rice. And it doesn't really require many gadgets. It's like if you have a chopping board and a good knife and one good pot or pan, you're kind of sorted for the whole book.
I think that's amazing. But also, as you say, we're all very familiar with these flavors if we do eat out at Japanese restaurants. But very infrequently have I felt like I was able to replicate them at home. As you say, there is a bit of a barrier in terms of feeling like you can be able to achieve those things. Why do you think that is specifically to Japanese cooking as opposed to perhaps other cuisines where something has filtered through and some of the cupboard essentials have made their way into pantries worldwide, while there's still like an element of
like
foreignness to mirin, for example, or these staples that actually, when you go through your book, come up time and time again, and you realize that they really are the building blocks of this cuisine.
I think, well, for example, in London, a lot of the Japanese restaurants end up being quite fancy to an extent, and it's an occasion restaurant that you go to have sushi or sashimi, and like really there's only 5 or 10 I can think of at the top of my head compared to like a million Italian restaurants, different regional cuisines. So I think that is kind of what makes it feel more foreign maybe and harder to do. And especially with the ingredients, apart from if you go to Japan Center or Longdan or another Asian supermarket, they've only kind of started going to supermarkets like Sainsbury's or Waitrose in the past few years, being able to get mirin that's supermarket own brand. But I mean, like you said, it's kind of, as long as you have mirin, sake, which also can be subbed with just another alcohol, it's a lot less flavourless than wine, but you can use like a clear alcohol, and soy sauce. As long as you have them, they're really the building blocks of a lot of Japanese food. I guess going to a Japanese restaurant, you end up ordering things like raw fish, which is a bit harder to get, and you know, you wouldn't normally have it in your fridge in comparison to Japan, where I can just pop to a supermarket and get like amazing raw tuna and have that for a 5-minute meal for lunch, which is a complete luxury, obviously. But that's why I wanted to make a lot of the book focus on like meat and veg and cooking, rather than just like slice some raw fish and serve it on a platter. I'm aware that's not what most people would do. You know, for entertaining, I understand it, but for like a daily lunch or daily dinner for your family or for your friends or housemates, people probably just want to cook something quite easy that takes less than half an hour and tastes different to what they're used to, or flavour profiles that are maybe similar they've had in restaurants but haven't put 2 and 2 together to have been able to just make it at home.
There's obviously a real sense of kind of familiarity to these dishes, plenty of memories that you kind of pepper through each recipe. I wonder, though, how much has your understanding of Japanese food also changed since moving to Tokyo? Because obviously you grew up with it and you visited a lot growing up. But what about when you actually put down roots there yourself?
I think, I mean, a lot of the book, I would say, like my mum and my family in Japan are massive inspiration for it. Home cooking was a massive thing in my family anyway. So we've always loved food. And I guess, going there for a holiday for a month a year, growing up as a kid, you're like eating at these restaurants and my grandma's cooking for me. And it's lovely. But then, once you're moving there, I'm actually cooking all the time. So I actually prefer cooking at home in Japan than in England. I love being able to see different kinds of ingredients. I also think, weirdly, cookbooks aren't a big thing in Japan, but cooking magazines for housewives are. So I love looking through them. And it's always so inspiring, and they find new ways to cook different like proteins or vegetables. And A lot of things nowadays are actually influenced from European cooking. So there's quite a lot of Italian-Japanese fusion, which you'll see in these magazines or you'll see on these cooking shows on TV or in restaurants. And I think 10 years ago or 15 years ago, that wasn't really as big of a kind of popular cuisine in Japan, whereas now some of my favourite restaurants, in Tokyo and beyond are Italian or Italian-Japanese. So I think in both ways, for England and in Japan, they're kind of both open to the cultures more and getting influence from them.
We're proud to support the craft of journalism. UBS brings you the latest news from around the world. Be part of an international network that brings together leading insights, research and technology across 24 time zones and 12 key financial hubs, with you at the centre of it all. UBS. Banking is our craft.
You're listening to The Curator, our weekly highlight show here on Monocle Radio. This time from Monocle Design, we speak with architect Marina Tabassoon. She discusses her inspiration for this year's Serpentine Pavilion.
In a way, it relieves you of that responsibility of a building which shapes people's lives, let's say. It's a place where people come together to have a nice time for different occasions, for different activities. And the idea is you take away nice memories, you take away being in a nice space, and then one point this building will vanish in a way. So that temporality is also an important part of it. But at the same time, it will have its life to some extent in the virtual realm. I do work a lot with geometry and very pure geometric forms. So the building has that what I call like a half capsule. So that formal approach is about geometry. And at the same time, trying to use material which I can find here. We've never built with wood because wood is not a material for us in Bangladesh. Because of our tropical climate, people try to stay away from wood as much as possible. There's only a very few sections of the country where they use wood as a structural member, but otherwise you don't see much of wood being used. So this is a new material for me in that sense, that it's a wooden building structure which is sourced here. We try to create this openness. It's a very archaic form, but at the same time, it's very open. So to embrace the location of the park and how the park actually enters into the space, it's solid, but at the same time, it's very porous. Those are issues I also try to address in our architecture, that how you blur the edge of the boundary between in and out, so that in is out and out is in. So all those aspects are pretty much there.
So there are some kind of principles that stretch across your work. Even if you look at the mosque that you worked on, you see light filtering into the space. I mean, I see some of your residences. There's also light and natural light inherent to that. Why are these enduring themes that come up again and again for you? And how does that link back to building a better world?
Light gives atmosphere. Light is a very important element. And that's why I try to use light in every possible way. In the mosque, you see light brings the sense of spirituality in that space. And light actually captures the spirit of the place and the space also. I'm always drawn to use light, especially daylight, in any possible way I can. Most of our projects will address daylight and ventilation. In our pavilion also, light plays an important role. We wanted an ethereal atmosphere into the space. That's why we were looking into translucent material. So the wood gives it a structure, but there is this facade which are translucent. We were initially thinking of jute as a material, but then jute doesn't have the right kind of fire rating that's needed to be placed so close to a very important gallery and also in the garden. So we had to source something which is local, and also we are using polycarb with a sort of a film on it that gives you that translucent light. And I think that is playing out quite beautifully.
Why is honouring spirit of place important to you? Why should we care about that?
I think architecture to me is that you come here, you experience it, and it's something that should touch you to the core. It should create a certain kind of a dialogue between the visitor or the person who's inhabiting this space. And I think that If you have that spirit of place, and I think that's very important because many buildings don't have that. And to be able to capture that spirit, which actually gives it a certain kind of personality, and that personality actually speaks to you. When you're able to create that, it stays with you. For me, it's very important that my buildings are a being rather than being a very static, lifeless object. So that's why I think bringing in light, bringing in anything natural addresses those aspects of a personality or, let's say, a being which has a life of its own.
You talked about putting people at the center of your work and that being really important. How does this link to that?
The way we designed the pavilion, it's a very archaic form, as I was saying, where you see a vaulted structure with a half-dome shapes, which is trying to create this place where you would come and you would spend time. I want people to come and sit there to be able to enjoy that space. People from all different backgrounds coming together and just celebrating humanity in a way. That's the plan for me.
So then how do Shamayana tents come into this?
When we thought about this whole typology of pavilion, I looked into my own background, and especially where I come from, in the Indian subcontinent, let's say. Shamiyanas have been used from the Mughal time or even before that. So these are structures made out of either bamboo as a structure and then made of fabric entirely. So it's fabric creating these very kinetic structures built to hold gatherings underneath it. When we were young, most of the weddings or even religious gatherings were used to take place under the shamiyanas. And I have memory of these beautiful light coming through these very colorful fabric. And that's something stayed with me. I thought if it's a pavilion and if I have to bring in my own background, that light really stayed with me. How can you interpret that light in London in a way? So that's how it sort of connected.
And now some exciting news from the publishing world. London-based streaming platform, production company and film distributor Mubi is launching its new venture, a publishing arm focusing on books about cinema and the visual arts. It was a pleasure speaking with Daniel Kazman, Mubi's Vice President of Editorial Content, to talk about the new venture and their first release, Read Frame Type Film.
One of the most exciting things about Mubi in general, and being at Mubi as long as I have, is that we're always expanding the radius of cinephilia. We're always trying to find new ways of bringing in new audiences, of bringing film to audiences and audiences to films. And so whether that means producing films or distributing films, putting films in theaters and online, we're always looking for new mediums, new methods of reaching audiences, and publishing is no different. In 2007, we started our online journal, Notebook, in order to create a digital publication that could reach a global audience, to advocate for cinema, to talk to filmmakers we love, to report from film festivals. And now with books, we're able to expand this circle even further and create physical objects that really embody our love of cinema, the artistry of cinema, embody them in a physical form that has a lasting value.
And I think this would sit so well to people that like the brand already, because I think there's a value to kind of the printed product in a way, right?
Absolutely. I mean, in a funny way, Mubi has gone backwards in order to go forwards. We started in a digital sphere. We started streaming movies. We started an online journal. Then eventually we put physical movies into physical theaters. We started creating a physical magazine, physical books. So, the trajectory of most film companies is you start in the physical world and you move to the virtual. We started virtual and moved to the physical. And I think our history really speaks to looking for ways of engaging people. And so if we first found an audience globally in the clouds, let's say, in a digital environment, now we have the ability to meet people where they are in bookshops, at movie theaters, at film festivals. I think engaging people outside the digital sphere as well as on the digital sphere is really the key to growing and maintaining an audience.
Before we talk about your first release, I believe there will be kind of different strands of the books you will publish. I wonder if you can tell us a bit more about what are those strands?
Yes, absolutely. So the way we're thinking about our publishing house is having several different series that you can pick up and put down year on year. And inside those series, we can do new and playful things. I mean, for one, I think it should be said that we're cognizant that there's many beautiful film publishers out there, book publishers that publish on films, art publishers that publish on films. And so we don't take starting a new publishing imprint lightly. We want to do something new and different and not just the same old thing. So with these 4 strands, we're hoping to create themes in which we can be playful, engage the subject, engage the audience, engage the format of the printed media in new ways. One strand is called auteurs. It's devoted to artist books. That's the aim, to collaborate with films and filmmakers for them to create books with us. Rather than us do a monograph about a filmmaker, we would come to a filmmaker and make a book with them. So many great filmmakers have other artistic practices that are with or adjacent to their work in film. And we would like to give them the opportunity to work in the printed medium in the way that they have the opportunity to work in film itself. We're also looking at the past and in other languages as well. We have a series called Internegatives. And the aim of that series is to do new translations into English, as well as republish untranslated works. I think this really aligns with what Mubi's curatorial values as a streaming platform has been for so long, which is that cinema is from all over the world, and it's also from many different eras. Cinema is an art that's now 135 years old, and there's cinema that's that old but still fresh and deserves to be revived and introduced to new audiences. And I think we can do this in the printed format as well. So many good books have either been made in languages that are not accessible to English language readers, or have been made but have fallen out of print or lost or forgotten to time. And we can use our intervention to bring this to new audiences. And then we're looking at books that we will devote to Mubi productions or releases. We're calling this series Lights. And what we're hoping to do here is not the same old thing of a nice screenplay with some nice behind-the-scenes photography, but really having the book embrace what these films are, embody the values and the artistry of the film subject, and transform that into a book. It's not just a book about a movie, it somehow embodies and carries on the artistry of that film in the printed medium. And then finally, the main series, and the series that our first book is devoted to, we're calling Projections. And that's devoted to film culture and film history at large, which will allow us to cover a whole range of diverse topics, in this case, artist films and typography.
We're back with The Curator. We have a highlight from Confet Corner from our sister magazine Confact. And this time we're in Dakar with designer Khadija Aishaba of L'Artisan.
It began 15 years ago. The shop 4 years ago. It was serendipity because it wasn't meant to be. I always said that I saw that I would have been either a lawyer or, the chief marketing executive or like a big brand, with my Starbucks mugs and things like that. So I've never imagined I would have I would have doing what I love for a living. What I can say is I wouldn't imagine, for example, stars or people like that gonna be into, boo-boos. What I can say is that I would not imagine boo-boo can change a life. So this is what I can say. And maybe also it showed me that things are object or material are not just an object. It can have an history. It can transfer a mood. It can make somebody feel better. It can make also somebody have his identity.
Well, you touched on something like an item that is integral, I think, to L'Artisan, which is the boubou. Can you please tell us why you were drawn to this specific garment, what it reminds you of, and what kind of approach have you taken to the very traditional boubou to make it into a L'Artisan type of boubou?
I'm a visual person. It's like when I see a fabric, I know what I'm gonna do about it. But the boubou, I was more into the embroidery. So generally, I don't know, I was obsessed by my grandpa's embroidery back in the days, and I was wearing it. I don't know why. Maybe I was close to him, so maybe it was a link to him, or he was alive. So at that time, so maybe it's a link to him. And also I think that there is a part where I was not wearing my grandma's boubou, but my grandpa, because I love how men are wearing things. But I think that the boubou is I don't know. It's you cannot really define it, and I like also that. It depends on the person who's wearing it. It's so personal. It depends on the embroidery and how they were wearing it also. They were using bazin generally, or jesner, or maybe cotton or hartum. And I tried to put it in a funky way, by using the camouflage, by using like a burger, like only like a burger boo-boo. So you have like the correlation between something that was existing and something that never exists. So
you said there that the boo-boo is very universal, but at the same time is very culturally specific. So what does it mean for you to be taking this specific item? You know, you were saying before that somebody told you, you know, you made me feel like I could wear a boo-boo again. Why do you think people stopped wearing boo-boos? And why is it so important that they do?
So I think that evolution of life. We were colonized by French people, so the complex also. Modernity, you know, sometimes you have like things are evolving and maybe you don't do the difference between what you have to leave and what you have to keep. So maybe there was like not a misunderstanding or something that make people like, you know, wear more modern things, and also what people are thinking about you. Because I know, for example, that when I was wearing my headscarf, people were making fun of me. But it was like I was 15 maybe, or 12, I think, when I started having a headscarf on my head. And my cousin were like, you're not coming with us, right, with this on your head. Or when you wear like your grandpa's clothes, they are like, oh, you weird. Why are you wearing this? It's like so oldish. It's giving like, you know, it's giving your grandpa. So I think that if people were thinking that when I was 15, at that time, I've never seen like somebody wear a boo-boo or having a headscarf. Even when I was wearing boo-boos at the university. So I've always wear that because I was comfy in it. But I think that it was like a part of me. You know, it's like when you come from a country and you like something because this is what you like, or this is what you know actually. I mean, if you don't wear the boo-boo, who's gonna wear the boo-boo? I think that somebody said that, oh, you must have a really strong personality to like still wear it while people were mocking you. But I did not really have that feeling because I like it. So it was just that I was comfortable with it. So, and I think that it's important like to hold our culture and to preserve it.
And finally, here on The Curator, we have Tall Stories. And this time we look at a beautiful space for community and public life in the heart of the Romanian capital.
This is one of the historical houses of Bucharest. It's a monument house, monument istoric protejat, as we say in Romanian, so it's protected by law. And it's the house in which the entrance of Romania on the side of Antanta to enter the First World War was signed secretly in the library that you have as it was back in the day. So the whole furniture and everything is still intact. This was the house of Vintila Brătianu, a son of Ion Brătianu, and the Brătianu family is one of the prominent political and historical families of Romania. You have many different villas. This is one of the villas that has been very well preserved over the years. It's been built at the beginning of the 1900s. And Vintila Brătianu back then was a mayor. He got the land plot after he finished his work as a mayor. And he was a visionary in many ways, in the sense that he got this whole land plot. And this is the only land plot that doesn't have a direct exit to the Ioanid garden. All the houses, besides this one that they sold the plots with some instructions on how to build an entrance from this garden. So this is called Parcelarea Ioanid, and it's like an open-air museum of Bucharest because you have all these beautiful houses. There was a recommendation on building in the Stilul Național Românesc, the Romanian national style, which this house represents very well, but some of the villas are not, so it wasn't mandatory, but you could choose from it. The villa is designed by architect Petre Antonescu, which is a very, very important figure of Romanian architecture. The house was used by the family for a long time until afterwards, once he died, it was nationalized. And during the communism, for almost 40 years, it was rented to the U.S. Embassy as a unofficial headquarters of the U.S. Embassy. And this villa has never been open to the public, so people wouldn't even know that this treasure is behind the big gates. Recently, we've started opening it to the public and making it a cultural place and giving it back to the community so that people can enjoy it. We did open last year. We already had some happenings. We always did tours with the architecture students and we had some small events. But in last winter, we had a whole concert. It was quite magical and we had people coming for this whole experience that we will be repeating. But before that, we are going to do other little events, always related to design, culture and these fields. And also we are planning and working for quite some time now on a historical exhibition to explain the whole story and to show people the story of the house, of this neighborhood and the family and the architect. We are bringing the community together and doing few cultural things, but this is going to go under one umbrella of a foundation that gathers all these actions that are meant to bring Bucharest and the public who's attracted to historical houses and to good quality cultural happenings to give it back to the community. I hope that people of all ages, Romanians and non-Romanians, always know what house they step in and know the history. And in general, I think it's very important for people to get to know at least a glimpse of history. And I think that gets harder and harder. But also I want people to live and go through experiences, cultural experiences that make them better and make them happier and make them actually see the sense of life and what truly matters.
That's all we've got time for this week's edition of The Curator. The show was produced by David Stevens and presented by me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Join us again next week, and thank you for listening.